The NBA trade deadline just finished a few days ago, and it was one of the most hectic, eventful, and craziest trade deadlines maybe ever, or at least in recent memory. We saw all-stars get traded. We saw trades that could shake up the league. We saw a ton of win-win trades and confusing trades. And today I'm going to be depicting the major trades and giving a grade on them. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Now, I know I'm extremely late to the party while doing this because the trade deadline just finished 3 days ago, but it's not too late. We've seen some of these players play their first games for teams, but we haven't got a full gauge on these trades yet. So I'm going to be grading them from an A to F scale. But before we start this video, turns out in the last 28 days, only 23% of you guys watching are subscribed to the channel. That is certainly not enough. So make sure you hit that red subscribe button if you enjoy more videos like this. And without further ado, let's just get into it. We're going to start off with a deal between the Pacers and the Kings, where the Pacers received Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and Tristan Thompson, and the Kings received Domantas Sabonis, Justin Holiday, and Jeremy Lamb. Now, I'm not going to be doing a ton of explanation on this because my last video, I explained why I think this trade is extremely lopsided, a bad trade for the Sacramento Kings, and an amazing trade for the Indiana Pacers. So if you want to know my reason for these grades, go check out my last video. The Kings fumbled the bag again, but my grade for the Pacers is an A+. Grade for the Kings is a C-. If you want to know why, check out my last video. Now we're on the biggest trade of the trade deadline, no questions asked. It was between the 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets in a trade between two all-stars, and a trade that's been in conversation for weeks. The Sixers got James Harden and Paul Millsap, and the Nets received Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and 2 first-round picks. Now, I think a consensus between a lot of NBA fans is this has got to be one of the biggest trades that's a win-win. In my book, that's how I feel too. The 76ers basically traded a guy that didn't actually want to be there. Ben Simmons is an extremely talented player, but he wasn't going to suit up in Philadelphia anytime soon. So for their sake, Ben Simmons does not mean anything to this. So they basically just gave up Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and 2 first-round picks, now pairing 2 amazing top 10 players in this league, James Harden and Joel Embiid, together in Philadelphia. James Harden is with his guy, Daryl Morey, and he's in a new environment that different than Houston and Brooklyn, 2 places that he didn't like. The Sixers get their scorer, their partner to Joel Embiid, and they are trying to compete for an NBA championship. I would give this grade an A. I wouldn't give it an A+ just yet because, yes, Harden does look good on paper, especially since you gave up a guy that didn't really want to be there. You did lose some depth, and you gave up some picks. That's not the reason why I'm giving it an A, not an A+. I give this an A, that high, because Harden is just such a talented player, and this could lead to a championship and the proper help for Joel Embiid. However, there is a possibility that this doesn't work. James Harden is getting older. He has not had his best time in his last destination, and he's also not has as good of a season this year. But it's going to be interesting to see how these 2 guys work, because Joel Embiid is not exactly a pick-and-roll threat. James Harden has played with bigs that has been pick-and-roll threats. Dwight Howard, Clint Capella. In Brooklyn, he had Nicholas Claxton, but Joel Embiid is sure, he's a post player, but he's not a pick-and-roll guy. He likes to create in the mid-range area. He stretches the floor out, and he works on his own in the post. He's also extremely ball dominant for someone that is a center, and he might be your MVP right now. He's playing MVP caliber, and getting him the proper help is needed. The 76ers starting lineup is great. I love that they didn't give up Matisse Thybulle in this deal because you needed that defense. So right now, it's looking like a Tyrese Maxey, James Harden, Matisse Thybulle. I would start Matisse Thybulle over Danny Green because of his elite defense. Tobias Harris at the 4, which is where he's played his best basketball. Joel Embiid at the 5. That is a championship starting team. Right now, when I look at the contenders in the Eastern Conference, I think of 3 teams or 4 maybe. I think of the Milwaukee Bucks and the Brooklyn Nets are the top 2, and then you got maybe Chicago and Miami. Now Philly has just elevated into the category. Now, do you guys think they are the favorites? Let me know down in the comment section. But I think this is a win of a trade for Philly, especially since you're done with the Ben Simmons drama. Ben Simmons is actually on another team where he can thrive, and that is the biggest thing for the Brooklyn Nets because Ben Simmons, his role is not asked to do too much. If I had to pick a winner for this trade, it would definitely be the Brooklyn Nets because James Harden, number 1, everyone knew he wanted out. Paul Millsap is doesn't really matter to you. He doesn't get a ton of minutes. He's basically kind of washed right now. You get the extra depth. You got Kyrie part-time. You got Kevin Durant when he comes back from his injury, which could be a little longer than we expect just because of the response that he gave on the All-Star draft. But you got this guy, Ben Simmons. James Harden has never been the guy to just run in transition and create for others. He likes to take things at his own pace. Sure, he's an amazing playmaker like Ben. Ben brings our defense, which is crucial because the Brooklyn Nets do lack a ton of the defensive end. He loves to run in transition. In Philly, he created the most assisted three-pointers out of any single player, and the Nets got a ton of shooters. They picked up Seth Curry, which is another elite shooter that is extremely underrated, and he's a very, very talented player. You got Joe Harris when he comes back, which will probably be next season. Patty Mills, he might miss a couple threes, but he's always going to be shooting the ball, and now he's going to get better looks due to Ben Simmons. You got Kevin Durant, you got Kyrie Irving, 2 of the best volume shooters in the entire NBA. Ben Simmons just makes this team click, makes this team better. He's not going to be asked to do too much. And with Kyrie and KD, it's basically going to be Ben Simmons is not going to be asked to be the second option. He is asked to do his role, which is definitely the best thing for Ben Simmons. Now, there's going to be some games where Kyrie, with his vaccination status, can't play at home. Kevin Durant will still be injured. He'll have to run the keys himself. But it just shows that if Ben Simmons is back, if he actually buys in, not to mention they get Seth Curry, who elite shooter, and then Drummond, another big body that plays defense. I was kind of like, this is amazing for the Nets. I was just kind of like, I'm a big Nick Claxton fan. I think Nick Claxton has tremendous, tremendous potential. So him still having a logjam at the center position with Drummond, with Aldridge, with Claxton. I wish Claxton did get traded. I would have loved to see him in a team. We're kind of like battling the standings, so I'm rooting against them. But a team like the Toronto Raptors, he can reach his fullest there. But they got Drummond, who is one of the best rebounders in the NBA, and 2 first-round picks. And if this Philly thing doesn't even work and they fall apart, you get 2 first-round picks. I love this deal for the Brooklyn Nets. I gave them the same grade, but Brooklyn is the winner in my opinion. The reason that I gave him an A and not an A+, and I hate to say it because he gets so much hate. He's gotten so much hate, so much unnecessary hate over the last months. The only reason why I'm giving this not an A+ is literally because of Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons has not proven enough in the playoffs. As much as I hate to say it, he just hasn't. He's shied away from big moments. So he is the biggest question. I trust him. I think he'll have a great role, but there is that slim possibility. However, with KD and Kyrie, Seth Curry, Drummond, I think you can afford that, but also you can't. I did spend a ton of time talking about this trade, almost 8 minutes. It's a big trade. I give them both an A. I think this is a huge win for both sides. Now we're going to one of the first big trades of the trade deadline between the New Orleans Pelicans and the Portland Trail Blazers. The Pelicans get CJ McCollum, Larry Nance Jr., and Tony Snell, and the Blazers get Josh Hart, Joe Ingles, technically. They got Nickeil Alexander-Walker, but they traded him for Joe Ingles, so I'm going to say that they got Joe Ingles. Tomas Satoransky, a protected first, and 2 seconds. Let's start about the Pelican side. They get that extra score. This doesn't put them over the top as a contender, but it still brings them into that play-in push. Potentially a lower seed that teams don't want to face when Zion comes back, which is still the biggest question. CJ has to carry the load. He just had a 36-point outing yesterday in his second game, so we know that's how good CJ is. And I like for the Blazers that they broke up the backcourt. But the Pelicans, they get that extra score, and that's always a good thing. Now, it's not a crazy big deal that they just got extremely what they wanted, but they get a solid A- here. It's a pretty good deal, especially since they get another good defender, and Larry Nance Jr., and the only person in NBA history in the 50-50-100 club, Tony Snell. So I think that's pretty simple. I think the Pelicans got what they wanted, and they didn't have to give up so much in the process. They had to give up Nickeil Alexander-Walker, but he's shown flashes, but not big flashes, and we haven't seen so much from him. Now, as for the Blazers, I'm giving this a C+, which is not the most ideal grade. They traded away CJ, Larry Nance, Tony Snell. They got back Josh Hart, who's still a pretty solid role player. I just don't like this for the Blazers because they basically went in a retool and not a rebuild, which is not the best thing for their franchise. Damian Lillard has suffered. Him and CJ McCollum, their best run was getting swept in the conference finals. Bringing in 3 veterans, you get some picks. 2 seconds is basically... Yes, there is like that 1% chance that you get a very good all-star, but it's probably not going to happen. And a heavily protected first from the Pelicans. Will you really get your next guy on a protected first? So they basically just went for role players. Anthony Simons has shown that he can be a star, future all-star in the making, in my opinion. I think you have to build around him. So, yes, they got some pretty solid pieces. I like these pieces just put in the Blazers with Damian Lillard. It looks solid. I just don't think that that's the direction they should go with, especially since they traded their guy that's been there for 9 seasons. And it's been a 20-point scorer for basically his entire career. This is what you get from him. You don't get youth. You get role players and protected picks, which is not ideal, which is why I'm giving it a C+. The players in itself aren't bad. They're actually pretty solid. I'm just giving it a C+, because I think they could have done so much more with this. Next up, we got a trade that went kind of under the radar, but it's still a pretty big trade for both sides between the Toronto Raptors and the San Antonio Spurs. The Toronto Raptors received Thaddeus Young, Drew Eubanks, and a second-round pick. The Spurs get Goran Dragic and a first. In my personal opinion, this is a pretty good win-win for both sides. The Raptors are basically going, you might be like, they have a ton of wing defenders. They got Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby. That's about it. And they actually, Thaddeus Young is a locker room guy. He is a leader. And the Raptors are in the playoffs right now. They are the 6th seed, as much as I hate to say it, being a Celtics fan. They are the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference. That is a playoff team. That is better than any of us have expected. And Thaddeus Young is going to help with that. He has experience. He's a very solid player, great defender, and can do a little offensively. He can play some small ball 5. So I do enjoy this deal. It's a good deal. They got Drew Eubanks. I don't know if he's going to do much for them. He played some minutes for the Spurs, but not a ton. You could have got a bigger, like, maybe a guy like Miles Turner or Nicholas Claxton or any Montrezl Harrell or any other big man, which is, you missed out on those guys. But Thaddeus Young is still a plus for this team. I'm giving it an A minus because of that reason, that they could have got a lot better, and also that they had to give up a first round pick for Thaddeus Young, which is, personally, I don't think they really had to do that. I think they could have gotten away with not giving up a first, because the Raptors are still a very young team and kind of in a rebuild phase, but it's also kind of in the push playoff phase, which is kind of weird, which is also a good thing for them. So I don't think they should have given up a first, especially since it's not even protected. And that's exactly why the Spurs come out as one of the biggest winners in this deadline, because we're going to talk about another Spurs deal, and they won. Goran Dragic is a very good veteran point guard for them. He would play nice under Greg Popovich, and that first round pick is really what boosts us to an A. The Spurs aren't getting into the playoffs anytime soon. They have a young all-star, but getting an extra first round pick for Thaddeus Young, you Spurs fans have got to be happy with that. That is more than they could have ever asked for. I'm giving this an A, a very solid A for the San Antonio Spurs. Speaking of the San Antonio Spurs, they get an A plus in this amazing deal. The Celtics and the Spurs. My Celtics got Derek White, and the Spurs received Josh Richardson, Romeo Langford, a 2022 first-round pick, unprotected, and a 2028 first-round pick swap. I don't know if it's swap worst or swap best. Let's start off on the Spurs side. This is an A plus deal. Derek White is 27 years old. He's in his prime. He's a playoff type of guy on a playoff team. And right now, the Celtics have been playing their best basketball of the entire season. He'll definitely help with that. The Spurs get Josh Richardson, who doesn't really mean a ton much to them. Now, for me, as a Celtics fan, I might be overvaluing this for the Spurs. We have Celtics fans, if you can agree with this, Celtics fans might agree with this. If it's just me, we have a certain attachment to some of the young guys on this team. They play their hearts out, and they have a ton of potential. Romeo Langford is one of those dudes. His defense is incredible. Even interior, for a guy that's 6'6", amazing defensive wing. Still needs to work on shooting in his offensive game. But Neesmith, Pritchard, Grant Williams, Robert Williams, Romeo Langford, we have a certain attachment to some of those guys. I grew an attachment for Carson Edwards, and I don't know where he is now. But I like that for the Spurs. I think you can develop him into a good player, good defensive wing. I don't like this for the Celtics, the fact that they gave up their first-round pick, because they are in the play-in, and there is a chance that they miss the playoffs, and the Spurs get that pick, but to maybe probably in that 15 to 20 range, maybe lottery if they lose in the play-in game. That's an absolute W for the San Antonio Spurs. Get their pick unprotected, which I'm not the biggest fan as a Celtics fan. However, I understand why they did it, and they got a first-round pick swap, 2 firsts, and a really talented young player for Derek White, a guy that they wanted to trade, an absolute A+ for them. They got a first for Thaddeus Young, and they got 2 firsts for Derek White. That's got to be something that they could have never asked for, and they got it. They got blessed, basically. Now, as for my Boston Celtics, they get Derek White, and I do like the pickup of Derek White. I'm very satisfied with him. He's a good defender. He played really good in his debut, even hit some shots. He was shooting the heck out of the ball. He has some experience. He's a really solid playmaker, and we gave up Dennis Schroeder we replaced him with Dennis Schroeder, which I think is a really good thing, because I would prefer him, and I do like this deal. It's an A- because they had to give up an unprotected first, which I don't think they had to do, but they maybe did. Maybe I'm undervaluing Derek White. I think we're going to enjoy having Derek White on the team. He played really good in his debut. I just want to see what he can do come playoff time. Next up, we got another Celtics deal. Not the biggest of deals, but I just want to briefly talk about it. The Celtics got Daniel Tice, and the Rockets got Dennis Schroeder, Enes Freedom, and Bruno Fernando. I think we could have gotten more for Dennis Schroeder. We've had Daniel Tice on this team before. He was solid, but he's also like, I'm glad we got rid of him, and now we're bringing him back. Daniel Tice is a very solid NBA player. He's a good defender. It's a very underrated part of his game. It's much better than Enes Freedom, so I'm glad we got rid of Enes because I don't know why we brought him back in the first place. But giving up Dennis Schroeder for Daniel Tice just does not sit right with me. I feel like we could have gotten more. I get that we wanted to go for Derek White and we want him to play the shooter role, kind of. Just doesn't sit right with me. I think we could have got something better. Not completely mad about this, especially since we caught a W on our first trade. But the Rockets, they get a solid B. I don't really exactly know. Like, it's a solid trade. Doesn't affect them in any way. They got rid of Daniel Tice, which is a good thing for them. It's just that they didn't really need any of the guys that they got. It's a decent trade. I don't really have much to say about it. I'm just saying, I like giving the Celtics a C, just because it just doesn't sit right with me, the fact that we traded Dennis Schroeder, Enes Freedom, and Bruno Fernando for Daniel Tice, if you understand what I'm saying. Next up, we got the biggest trade of the trade deadline, a 4-teamer, and this is going to take a while to break down. So the Bucks, they got rid of Rodney Hood, Semi Ojeleye, and Dante DiVincenzo, and they received Serge Ibaka and 2 seconds. Let's start off with the Bucks. This is a B. Serge Ibaka improved their center depth. Brook Lopez has been out the entire season, and I know how good Serge Ibaka is. He sometimes has his bad games, but he can shoot the 3, he can play some good defense, and he has that experience. He's a champion. He knows what winning is all about. And I like that the Bucks actually did try to upgrade a little bit. Now, they did have to give up Dante DiVincenzo, which is still not the best thing, but you're getting a guy like Serge Ibaka. I think this is a solid B for them. For the Clippers, they sent away Serge Ibaka and received Rodney Hood and Semi Ojeleye. Got some extra wing depth. Nothing too crazy. I'm giving this a solid B for them as well. The Kings, I'm telling you, the Kings, other than that Domantas Sabonis trade, this was a good trade. This was a very good trade. Now, they sent away Marvin Bagley in a second. Marvin Bagley did not reach his full potential with the Kings. I'm all for giving him up. They received Dante DiVincenzo, which is an absolute W. Get Trey Lyles, which provides some shooting for them. Josh Jackson provides some shooting for them and an extra second. I like this deal for the Kings. Give me an A for that one. And then the Pistons also get an A, because they literally just sent away Josh Jackson, who hasn't shown anything in his career, and they can have the opportunity to develop Marvin Bagley, who is still young. He might be considered as a bust, but he is still young and has potential. And maybe, I don't know if he can reach his fullest in Detroit, but it's good to take a flyer on him. Pistons, an A. I think this was a really good balanced trade for all 4 teams, and that never happens. Finally, we got one of the last trades, and it was Kristaps Porzingis, Spencer Dinwiddie, Wizards Mavericks. The Mavs get Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans, and the Wizards get Kristaps Porzingis and a second-round pick. And this has got to be one of the more confusing trades of the deadline, in my personal opinion. Let's start off with the Wizards. Dinwiddie has been super inconsistent, has not played as good as he usually was in Brooklyn. Davis Bertans had that one good season and is now looking like one of the most overpaid role players in the entire NBA. He isn't even a role player. Sometimes he just doesn't even get minutes. His shooting has been extremely atrocious from that one good season where he was in the three-point contest, was one of the best stretch bigs, and almost took home it, and then got his big contract. Ever since then, he's been really, really bad. I just don't get this for the Wizards, because they get Kristaps Porzingis in a second, right? Porzingis doesn't move the needle, doesn't help your team. Wizards are not making the playoffs this year. Just trust me on that. They are not making the playoffs this year. Beal is out for the season. You don't have any guard play. You traded Montrez to get Ish Smith and Vernon Carey. That's literally about it. Porzingis is going to be the only guy. They're going for a reset, but they're also getting Kristaps, which doesn't make sense. It's not a very good deal. I would just rather them keep their guys. Give me a C- for the Wizards. It just doesn't make sense. And for the Dallas Mavericks, Spencer Dinwiddie takes some pressure off Luka, but he's also been extremely inconsistent. And the Mavericks don't have big men play. Mark Cuban was saying something about, you guys are sleeping on Davis Bertans, and you don't know how good he's going to be, which I guess makes a ton of sense if Davis hits more shots and plays better in Dallas. Then yeah, sure, why not? But he's not going to be Porzingis. I'm 100% sure of that. And you didn't get what you want for Kristaps, just getting not even a pick, not even a good defender, not even a good center. Like, it just didn't make sense in the first place. A very confusing trade. Why I'm giving it a C- and a C. Yes, I know, I told you this was going to be one of the longest videos. We're just approaching 26 minutes. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you stayed and watched all of these trades, my grades, you're definitely a real one. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Comment down below what you thought of the trades and how your favorite team did. And yeah, peace.